trunk and treat. Isn't that awesome? Whoa, well done, sister. Super cool. So that's coming up on Saturday, October 25th. I am inviting our friends, our Korean American worshiping friends, as well as the Child Bloom Guitar Ministry friends to not only come and participate, but maybe have some cars with us to help make this a big thing. So haven't heard back yet, but that would be awesome if we just really did this thing big. So that is coming up on the 25th. Any other announcements that I'm forgetting about? All right, well then let's move into a time of prayer and reflection. I know Terry texted this morning that he's not feeling well today, so we want to lift him up in prayer. I know Sue has been out all week, and I've checked in on her a couple times, and just tell she's struggling, just really struggling. So we lift her up in love, and for JC, who is with her, of course, as well. What do you bring with you today, church, that we might lift up in celebration or before God, the healer of all things? Helen.
Bob is not here today because he had
Okay.
rest and recoup.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm the procedure of going in for an endoscopy and colonoscopy early tomorrow morning.
Okay.
All prayers appreciated.
Yes. Okay. So prayers for Bob, who has a continuing and lingering headache, and for an endoscopy and colonoscopy for Helen tomorrow. Yeah. What else, church, do you bring with you today? Pat. Cool. Yeah. Great. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we've got, it's going to be as a flyer in the community news, in the newspaper. We're hoping that Joy FM is able to talk about it a little bit, and we're making extra flyers to mail out. We can share it digitally. I think it's on our Facebook page now, right? And I think it's on our website. So, yeah, as much as you can share, that'd be awesome. Thank you for all your efforts with that, Pat. You're a champion. Any others, church, that we might lift up today? All right, well then let us center ourselves, open ourselves, be mindful and aware, optimistic and free. Would you pray with me? Spirit, we offer thanks for today, to just have breath in our bodies, to have thoughts that are our own, to make the choice to gather together as people, to stand in unity and love, to worship and follow your footsteps in the hopes that our efforts, our worship, might share your light of unconditional love and truth to the world around us. Help us to be your servants, your disciples, your pupils, your beloved children. We give you thanks now and always. In your name we pray. Amen. Jerry has offered to read this morning's scripture for us, coming from Isaiah 58.
If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of the evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the streets to live in. If you refrain from trampling the Sabbath, from pursuing your own interest on the holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and a holy day of the Lord honorable. If you honor it, not going your own ways, serving your own interest or pursuing your own affairs, then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride upon the heights of the earth. I will feed you with the heritage of your ancestor Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. If you
That's great. No, that's great. Thank you. And now a reading of the Old Testament. Thanks, Jerry. So you guys can head off to Sunday school. We had a great conversation on the way up about the Great Schism of 1054 and the Protestant Reformation of 1517. So we'll see where you guys go today. Isaiah is considered the most major of the major prophets. Major only because his book is physically the longest. We have the most literature from the book of Isaiah than any other Old Testament Hebrew Bible prophet. It is a book of warning, of cautionary tale. It is a book of ultimatums, of people struggling to understand how to take up the mantle of discipleship and servanthood. How do I follow this God who has laid out these commandments, this God who has liberated us from slavery, who has set us free and raised up prophets and kings and judges? You have moments of what we would call prophecy, and the child that would be born to the young woman, of the Messiah who would come to save us. You have moments of introspection and reflection about how the people have failed in their pledges to serve and honor God. I was playing pickleball up at Plummer Park in Edwardsville yesterday with some guys that I see every couple of months. And, we're between points, and we have 10 seconds to catch up. And the one guy goes, "So what's new in the world of Christianity?" And I said, well, there's a big rise in violent extremism among some of the groups. And he's like, okay. And then, dunk, dunk, dunk. How do we faithfully honor our understanding of who God is, of who Christ is, and it matches with our behaviors, our words, our understandings of how our communities, family, country, and world are run? Part of Isaiah, we don't want to pretend that it's all of it, but part of Isaiah is addressing this incongruency. You say that this is what you're about. You say that you're following a God of love, that you care about all people, that you're looking to the least of these, and yet this is how you're living your life. And it is a stark challenge and reminder to say, as long as you have that incongruency, you run the risk of hypocrisy. Now, this is a very practical passage. This has some practical application stuff for us that helps us try to live into that congruency. Isaiah starts off by saying, through God, saying, if you remove the yoke. So this is an agricultural term, the yoked oxen who are plowing the field. This thing that is placed over their heads and shoulders, and they provide the ox power, the cattle power, the horsepower to do the work. It's productive, but it's burdensome. I think America knows something about this. We impart our country with a rich history of working hard, grit and determination, perseverance, even when it's burdensome. We can be efficient, we can be productive, but we can burn out. We look at other countries that have 4-day work weeks or much more generous maternity and paternity leaves, who celebrate vacations instead of raising an eyebrow saying, well, why don't you bring your laptop with you just in case? So we live in this dichotomy. Hard work is good. Trying our best is good. Productivity, efficiency, it's good. But sometimes it comes at a cost. One of the models we have on how to address this is the creation story itself. God's rolling up God's sleeves and creating the stars and the sky and the waters and humanity and animals and the oceans and the sun, all these things. 6 days of hard work, woof, and then the seventh day, he rests. And then later we'll tell people like Moses in the commandments, keep the Sabbath day holy. And for me, this is not a hard and fast line that says you better not lift one finger on Sunday. Because the Sabbath used to be Saturday, Sabado, Sabbath day. Christians changed it in the 2nd century to become Sunday to differentiate ourselves from Orthodox Jews. So the day of the week doesn't matter. But the idea that in your work, in the way that you wear your yoke, in what you're doing, yes, try hard, yes, be productive, yes, be determined and go for it and do the best that you can, but if you burn yourself out, if you let worry eat away at your soul, if you become consumed by the work and forget the rest and the replenishment, then you are not living in congruent balance. This is part of where I think God is directing Isaiah to go in this passage. You have people who are doing the right things, who are working hard, who are checking the boxes of monotheism at the time, of honoring God. They're doing the things, and if you said, are you doing the things? I'd say, yeah, we're doing the things. We're going to temple, we're praying, we're offering, we're fasting, we're doing the things. And the challenge is that they are so yoked with the things that they have lost the intention and the heart behind it. Intention is huge for us. The why means everything for us. Why do you come to church? Why do you honor God with your lips? Why do you say that you're a Christian? Why do you volunteer? Why do you help out and do things? Why do you give of your money? And if we don't know the answers to that, it's possible that we're just doing the things because we think that we should. This happens to all of us. We're not here to beat up on ourselves about it. But we are here to try to cultivate an awareness that if we know, understand, and cherish the why and the passion that you bring to serving God, to doing the spiritual disciplines, then your yoke looks differently because you can live in a balance. You can give, you can sacrifice, you can pray, you can serve, you can help, and also take care of yourself in a way and allow others to take care of you, that you become parts of a beautiful system, a network of God's servants and disciples. What's interesting is by the time we get to Matthew's gospel, you have Jesus saying the line, "My yoke is easy. My burden is light." Now, this is the man who figuratively, spiritually, and metaphysically is carrying the weight of all sin of humanity on his shoulders. And he says, my yoke is light. Jesus, as the incarnate God, is still able to live in a balance, to understand the things that he is sent to do, but he still withdraws to find solace. He still goes to a quiet place. He still balances large group miracles and preaching with small group discipleship parables. He still finds time, apparently, to unwind and go to weddings at Cana. To find this balance of genuine restoration and rejuvenation in the midst with hard work, burdensome work, kingdom work. God, through Isaiah, says, if you remove the yoke, if you're able to take off what you're doing and working so hard from time to time, then, and he continues on. Some of this must be a perspective thing. Some of this must be our ability or lack of to analyze our lives, our day-to-day, our week-to-week, and say, this is the amount of effort that I am expending on this, this, and this. This is how I am pushing myself to and beyond my limits. This is how I'm putting exactly the right amount of energy. This is the way that I probably could try harder. And to carve out that time to find the elements of Sabbath, of rest, of restoration that are genuinely and authentically refueling to your soul. And this is different for all of us. This might be prayer. This might not be prayer. This might be taking a walk in nature. This might be playing with your grandkids. This might be watching soap operas. I don't know what this is for you. But what are the things that genuinely replenish your energy, your soul, and ultimately your connection to God? If you remove the yoke and remove the pointing of the finger. So now we're making a list of the things that drain you. If you talk about extroversion and introversion, the technical understanding, the clinical understanding of those words are the things that fill you with energy, that replenish your reservoirs. So for Converse hat-wearing pastors you might know who are extroverts, they get their energy the more people that they are around. The more the crowd is, the more that they're refueled in a genuine way. And for the introverts online and in the room, you have that time where you need and want to be by yourself, and that fills you back up. That is rejuvenating to you. Whereas if I spend too much time by myself, I go crazy. What is that balance for you? This is a list that God is making through Isaiah to say, here's some things that are draining you. You're wearing the yoke too much. You are working yourself to death. You are pretending that these good works of faith that you are doing are all that you need, but if the intention behind why you're doing them is not authentic to you, then that mask wearing becomes exhausting. The parallel, I think, here is when Jesus challenges the Pharisees on the street corners who are telling all the people of the town all the great things that they're doing for God. And they're rationalizing, and you can hear the desperation in their voice, and they're like, this is why I'm a good person. This is what I've been doing. And it's exhausting wearing that mask if the why, the impetus, and the intention behind serving is disingenuous. The yoke is draining you. The pointing of the finger is draining you. We've got a problem with this in our world now, don't we? The displacement of blame. The I'm only doing this because someone else messed it up for us. This wasn't my fault, this is someone else's fault. It's everywhere. And part of where this scripture is going is saying, right or wrong, that behavior, that mentality, it drains you. It keeps you from being the best that you can be. You might be right about it, or you might be wrong. It doesn't matter. By you making that decision, say it's someone else's fault, that person's to blame, it's that guy, that woman, get him. All of that is draining to you and keeps you from operating at your best self. And this is what I want us to focus on and be challenged by. The areas in your life and mine where we are finger pointing. And I'm sure we've all got it. It's draining. And it's limiting us. Are there ways to find productive avenues to create new change, to create new hope, to proclaim love in a way that can help things move along, that are not so focused on demonizing the past or the present or people, but instead shining a light and saying, I'm here to be part of it. Are you here to be part of it too? If Jesus is our model for this, on the one hand, yeah, every time he is challenged by the Sadducees, the Pharisees about Scripture, and they say, well, aren't you supposed to not heal on the Sabbath? Aren't you supposed to leave the temple bread for the priests? Aren't you supposed to da-da-da? And Jesus says, yeah, but in the here and now, I'm about loving people. My disciples need food and replenishment. This person needs healing. This person needs to know that they're loved and welcome in the kingdom. And the present hurts of the people here supersede anything that has been done in the past. It's a wild dynamic that I encourage you to think about. I cannot think of an exception. Every time Jesus is challenged, the law says, the Torah says, the priests have always done it this way. Jesus comes back and says, we're going to live in grace now for the people who are hurting right here, right now. We're going to love them. That's more important than any example you can come up from behind. We don't ignore the past. We don't pretend that it hasn't happened. But we love people now. And the ways that we are carrying these burdens and anxieties, the ways that we're working and writhing ourselves to the bone, the ways that we are pointing fingers and displacing and choosing anger and blame and pointing to incompetency, we are draining ourselves. And God provides another option. How do we lower our walls, open our hands, and say, here I am, Lord. Use me. And part of it involves love. Part of it involves forgiveness. And part of it involves our intention to say, there's still hope because God is alive and I'm a part of the movement. God, through Isaiah, says, if you remove the yoke, the pointing of the finger, and the speaking of evil. I'll be honest, I'm not totally positive what exactly is insinuated here. My guess is it has to do with pessimism and cynicism. My guess is it has to do with this continuation of demonizing and displacement and projection. It has to do with not being a Debbie Downer all the time. And I don't know if you're like me, church, but we can struggle with this. The speaking of not love, the speaking not of hope, but the speaking of evil. It's draining to us. Yeah, the world is broken. Yeah, the world is dark. Yeah, we've got 100 million growing edges that we can work on. We're aware, and it's good to stay informed, for sure. But part of our call, part of the challenge to the people of Isaiah's time, part of what Jesus says to the disciples time and again, part of what Jesus will say at the Last Supper, what will you do now? Given that the world is fractured, who will you be now? Will you be someone so weighed down by all the struggles of the world that you do nothing? That your yoke is that heavy? Will you be so consumed with not internalizing some of these problems, and so it's easy to blame and to point and to project? Will you be someone that just regurgitates the evil, the negative speak? Because that's what everyone else is doing. On a practical level, I hope this is helpful for us. God's reminding us, if you work on taking some of this stuff away, out of your vocabulary, out of your thought process, out of your heart, if you work on not being so dang negative and cynical and pessimistic, of not pointing fingers and saying it's always someone else's fault, not being so weighed down by everything that you can't control, good things can happen. You will be better. You will be a better servant for God. You will be a brighter star and light for Christ. You will have more mental, cognitive, and spiritual energy to provide to the kingdom. This is a graduated thing. This is a type of message that I imagine we go home and we say, okay, I can work on this, and I'm going to work on this a little bit this week. I'm going to tell my partner, my dog, my friends, myself, and God that I'm going to work on not being so negative this week. I'm going to work on not letting worry hold me down so much this week. I'm going to work on not blaming someone and going, yep, that person, yep, those people, so much this week. And we see what happens. We see if we wake up with a little more of a spring in our step. We see if there's more hope that we are choosing to invite into our lives. And that if we're a little better, then the people we're around might be a little better too, encouraged by an example. And we have a contagiousness. So those are three things that we work on reducing. God reminds Isaiah, you people have offered to feed the hungry, but because you haven't done it with a pure heart, it feels hollow. I've seen a meme on social media these past couple weeks that says, the work of feeding the hungry is as important as the work of raising the dead. Part of that, I think, is this idea that we as Christians sometimes can say, well, we're in the resurrection business. We are here because Jesus has resurrected from the dead, and that's what we're focusing on. That's the big thing, and as long as we're lashed into that, then we're doing okay. And there's some truth to that, but on the practical level, we're not the ones resurrecting, God is. And what we're called to do is to feed the hungry. And if we get too focused on the dogmatic ideations of resurrection, of what has happened, and we're missing the call to feed the hungry, to serve the poor, to love the marginalized, to care for the orphans and the widows, to release the captives from prison, to give the tunic, to walk the extra mile, to turn the other cheek, to love the least of these, then we are missing out on the grace that is presented to us in the here and now. And we add to our yoke. We add to our finger points. We add to our speaking of evil. I had a really interesting conversation with some folks at a friend's pool party this past week. These two ladies that I sort of know, but we haven't had real life discussions. And they found out that I was a minister, and the one says, "Oh, you're a pastor, that's so cool." And I said, "That's a sentence that I never hear. So cool, wow." And we had this big discussion about politics and religion, and it went well. I want to preface this. It went well. And we had a wide variety of opinions, but it went well. There was great grace offered. And as we're sitting there in this pool, we see bits of grass from around the pool floating in the water, time and again. And so we were talking about deep stuff with systematic racism and generational poverty and redlining during Jim Crow segregation times and some of the ways that we have struggled to invite equality among people. And what does it mean for us as people of relative privilege or power to respond as Christians? They're both Catholics. And it's a good discussion. And the one woman is just kind of listening and listening as I'm talking with the other. And she says, "I see this grass in the pool. And I could be picking it out as you are, Will." I'm just picking out grass. "But I'm going to trust the machine. I'm going to trust the filter. I'm going to trust that it's going to be handled in a way because there's always going to be grass in the pool." And I felt like I knew where she was going. And I said, "Jesus says that the poor will always be among you. Always. There will always be something for you to do. And so the question is not, will you fix it once and for all? Because that's not feasible. That's God's job. Or will you do nothing? Or will you always be working? Because this is the model of Christ. There'll always be grass in the pool. There'll always be problems for us to work on. There'll always be elements of power manipulation, of inequality, of someone being in and someone being out. There's always been that. It's the way humans are. We're not called to try to fix it in one fell swoop. And we as humans do this, usually with military force. I'll fix this. I'll force them. And we're also not called to do nothing. We're called to work the fields because the harvest is soon and the harvest is now. We're called to wear the yoke, to work, to try, to cultivate. We're called to love and to forgive. How do you live in the balance that is congruent? How do we serve? How do you live out your life as a Christian, a follower of Christ? But you don't get burned out. You take care of yourself. But you're always asking, what now can I do? What's my next step that I can do? What's my small way that I can contribute? How are you pulling the grass out of the pool? Yeah, more is coming. Yeah, you're not going to get it all. But this is the model of faith. Jesus, town after town, heals, preaches, teaches, miracles. There's always more, always more, always more crowds, always more to be done. We're put on this earth as a challenge to work and to love with God. How do you live in that balance? Where we don't go to the extreme to say, I'm going to find some way to just fix all this at once. I will make everybody be on one page and bend one knee to something other than God. And not live in the other extreme where we say, it's all too much. I can't do anything, so I'll do nothing. Keep your hands in the pool. If we can choose that, if we can get to these places to reduce the negative talk, to reduce the finger pointing, to reduce the burden that weighs us down, if we can understand that the hungry and the sick and the poor will always be among us, and we find that balance God says through Isaiah, then your light will rise in the darkness. You have this sunrise analogy. From the night, over the horizon, you'll see this glimmer that begins to peek out. And through your efforts, working on yourself, working in your community, working in your church and your family, your light will start to rise. And of course, to carry the metaphor further, the night that is so dark and uncertain will transform into the day. A newness is possible. It's my hope and in my reasoning that being part of a faith community, being part of church, is not to go once a week and to get a spiritual cortisone shot to say, this will get me through the week. Okay. That's not the goal. If that happens from time to time, great. If it helps sustain you. But the point of this life, of this gathering, is that there is genuine hope for things to change and things to be better. Genuine hope, because God is that big and that wonderful. And so even if it feels like we're in darkness at times, this idea that our light will shine in a transformation from the night into day, that is God's reality. That's what we're working towards. Legitimate change in the name of hope and love. Not just the bare minimum that you and I can get to sleep tonight, but that our efforts in doing some of these small or big practical things that we are reducing in our lives, the ways that we invite hope, that we're learning, that we're following the example of Christ, these are the things that, done en masse over time, can become contagious and bring about genuine light. Hopefully we've all had moments in our lives where we have felt like we're on the mountaintops and life is good, where we are easily able to find joy every day. Maybe that's now for you. But why we wear the yoke, why we try to reduce blame, why we say, here I am, Lord, use me, is to help transform the night into the day, to let Christ's light shine. It's a real hope that we work towards. It's our fuel for why we do what we do. The writer through Isaiah says, this will work to satisfy your needs in parched places. One of my favorite examples is when Jesus meets the woman at the well. Talk about a parched place. This arid wasteland, she goes at noon when she hopes no one will be there. She feels like she's worthless, an outcast of society, having had 5 husbands. Jesus says famously, I'll give you living water. It will satiate your thirst. If you follow me, if you acknowledge that your past, your darkness, your struggles, your yoke does not define who you are, you won't be thirsty in the same way anymore. You won't be desperate. You won't be clamoring for people's approval. You won't be hopeless and helpless. You will know that you have a role in this kingdom work to transforming the night into day. You and I have dry and parched places. If not in our personal lives, we can name elements of our communities, country, world, dynamics that feel parched. And part of why we try to do what we do is to invite God's living water, God's light, God's forgiveness into all aspects of living, to satisfy those needs. And part of what that story is with the woman at the well, part of what the healing stories is when Jesus meets a blind man or a leper, when Saul is blinded on the road to Damascus, When Moses says on the mountain that I'm a stutterer and a murderer, is an acknowledgement that if we're going to go on, if we're going to do this thing, we can't do it without God's help. And I know we hear that in church and we're like, yeah. But to what degree is this really hit home for you? You can say, I've got all these gifts, I've got this stability in my life, I've got this going on in my history and my wisdom. But if I'm going to work on these things, if I'm going to try to let the light shine, if I'm going to try to transform the darkness, if I'm going to play my role, I can't really do it without God's help. And this is hard for this, I think, to generalize. It's harder for us men to get to this place of humble submission. Say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to work on these things. I'm going to be aware of my growing edges. I'm going to add what I can to God's kingdom. And I'm hope that it's going to become a contagious thing. I want to better myself. And that's hard. And it requires at some point this submission of surrender. Say, God, I need you. If you're going to give me living water that I don't have to keep going back to the well every day, then I need you. And friends, at the risk of trying to sound overly dramatic, this is a really key piece in our lives as disciples. Without that moment of surrender, and it might be one moment, it might be a daily and weekly thing that we come back to say, God, I love you. God, I'm grateful for everything that you've done for me, but I need you. If I'm going to get better, if the world around me is going to get better, if your light is going to shine, then I and we need you. Not in a 1 hour on a Sunday kind of way, but in a way that hits me in my heart and runs through the bones of my soul. So if that's something you struggle with, church, I invite you to think deeply and to pray. God, would you help me see the ways that I need you? On a practical sense, if some of these things that we're talking about reducing blame and finding the balance between stress and work, of not being so pessimistic, if that's been hard or if that seems fruitless, you feel like you're running in circles, perhaps a component is this radical surrender. God, if these things are going to stick in my life, I got to really understand how much I need you. From here, God says to Isaiah, I can make your bones strong. If you hold these tenets in balance, if this is what you and your people are about, if it stops becoming about checking the boxes of the spiritual disciplines that you're doing just to do it, but you're really working on yourselves. You really care about this because you want to transform the darkness into a sunrise. If you want to feed the hungry, satiate the parched places of the world, I can make your bones strong. I can offer that hope like nothing else can. He goes on to say, you will be like a watered garden. The ways that you will grow, the fruit that you will produce, the harvest that is possible because of the seeds that you have scattered. I can do that, and I want to for you. I love this next line. It says, your ancient ruins will be rebuilt. The foundation that your life has been, the sacred temples that you used to visit, the ways that you regress in your moments of immaturity, all those ancient things that you have built that have seemingly been partially destroyed and lie in ruin. They're still there. They're still part of your life, but they're not functioning in the way that they once did. Those can be rebuilt. I'm sure as you've reflected on your life and you think about ways that you acted or ways that you thought or things that you thought were helpful or fruitful or fun in your past, they just look a little differently now, right? They're just a little more nuanced. Maybe they're a little more decayed. Maybe they've crumbled down to ruins. Part of this section is saying that your bones still have the ability to be strong enough to persevere. Your garden still can grow as I water it. The things that you have decided are long since desiccated and non-functional can be rebuilt. God's saying, this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm asking you to work on you. I'm asking you to surrender to me. I'm asking you to open yourself up, and I'll provide the water. I'll provide the mortar. I'm the one who will walk with you. We can do this. This is how we change darkness to light. He says, you will be called the repairer of the breach. Now, this is interesting because for me, God's the repairer of the breach. For me, God's the one that fixes the holes in the fabric of time. But he puts it on us here. The breach implies invasion. The breach implies enemy forces working against us. The breach acknowledges that this life is hard and unfair. And there are holes in the walls. But if you and I choose some of these things, if you and I are serious about reducing the blame, about reducing the language of hate, about surrender, we have the ability to be repairers of the breach, to fill in the holes and the gaps as our ancient ruins are rebuilt, as our gardens are rewatered. You and I have the ability to say we are helping to fix the world with God's help. You and I are helping fix the world. Not because we've got the answers, not because only we can do this, but that's part of our role as we think about what are we doing as disciples. We're trying to invite in prayer compassion and forgiveness. We're trying to work on ourselves to be a brighter light for the community. And by doing that, it is fixing some of the finger pointing, some of the hate speech, some of the evil that goes around. Your light and mine helps repair the breach each and every day. Do not think otherwise, church. And so we gather in part on Sundays like this to encourage and remind ourselves that our work is worthy. God is the ultimate agent of change, but we are fueled by His Spirit and pushed forward to march in alleys and streets and pathways that create a difference. When we find that balance of taking care of ourselves, of surrendering ourselves to God, and working on these aspects of our lives that can promote transformative light. But the bookend to this section is that God, through Isaiah, is saying, but you guys are just checking the boxes, and you've become slovenly and lazy, and you are trampling the Sabbath. And the work that you're supposed to be doing to work on yourself, to be better, to be this light, to find surrender, it's like the hordes of animals are trampling all over it, and you're spitting in my face. So let's not do that, church. Let's not go to the extremes where we force everyone to believe and follow one thing. Let's not go to the extreme where we do nothing and say we're so overwhelmed by our yoke that we do nothing. We live to be these agents of light, to invite into our lives the awareness that hope exists, that our goal is not to just get through today, but to help transform the darkness. And you and I have an ability in how we act, how we speak, how we react, how we share, how we give, how we sacrifice, to help repair the breaches of the world. It is worthy work. May God hold us close as we do so. Amen. Church, as we try to understand ourselves at Celebration Church as one element of this, part of our sacrifice is through communal giving. If that's something you feel called to do, we have a plate here on the altar. You can give securely online at celebrationcares.org. Scroll to the bottom and click the green button. I feel confident saying that this church is not obsessed with money. We are not looking at how we can take. We're dreaming of ways that we can give. This is part of your discipleship experience. The invitation lies before you.